Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the latest market data to tackle one of the biggest and, let's be honest, most stressful financial decisions you're ever going to make. Should you rent or should you buy? We're tossing out the anecdotal advice from your well-meaning friends and family today, and we're looking strictly at the numbers.
For generations, the American dream has been completely synonymous with homeownership. I mean, we've all heard the old conventional wisdom, right? That signing a lease is basically just throwing your hard-earned cash straight down the drain. Well, we're going to challenge that assumption today, because the reality of today's housing market paints a very different picture. Let's hit you right out of the gate with a shocking reality check. Recent data from Realtor.com shows that it is, on average, a whopping $1,027 cheaper per month to rent a starter home than to buy one in the top 50 U.S. metros. That means buying a starter home right now is roughly 60% more expensive than renting the exact same property. Just let that sink in for a second.
Because this is such a deeply personal and financially complex topic, we've mapped out the latest research into a clear, logical roadmap for you. We'll quickly cover the renting advantage, the income affordability gap, a tale of two markets, hidden costs and equity, and finally, making your choice.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1, the renting advantage.
So a massive comprehensive study by Bankrate looked at the 50 largest metros and found that the typical national monthly mortgage payment for a median-priced home is $2,703. Compare that to a typical rent of just $1,979. That is a staggering gap of nearly 37% nationwide.
And Realtor.com data from June 2025 backs this up, showing the trend is holding remarkably strong. They found an average monthly savings of $908 when you rent a starter home across the country. In fact, out of the top 50 major metros, renting is more affordable in 49 of them. Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania is literally the single major metro left where buying a starter home actually remains cheaper than renting.
Moving right along to Section 2, the income affordability gap. Check out this massive $35,000 gap. According to Redfin, homebuyers need to rake in over $111,000 annually just to afford a median-priced home. But to afford the typical rental, you only need to earn about $76,000. Now, compare both of those to the median U.S. household income, which sits right around $86,000. So the typical American household is completely priced out of buying, but they can comfortably afford to rent.
But here's a really fascinating twist. Despite this huge hurdle, the affordability gap is actually the smallest it's been in 3 years. Why? Well, mortgage rates have started to settle closer to 6%, which brings monthly home buying costs down slightly year over year. Meanwhile, rental costs ticked up by about 2%. Combine that with the fact that wage growth is currently outpacing housing costs, and the dream of buying is actually slowly inching closer to reality for some folks.
Okay, let's pivot to Section 3, a tale of two markets.
Geography is absolutely everything here. When we contrast ultra-expensive hubs against more affordable cities, the geographic divide is wild. Take San Jose, California, for example. A buyer there needs to earn a staggering 175% more than a renter. The monthly mortgage is over $9,000, while rent is around $3,400. But jump over to places like Detroit, Pittsburgh, or Cleveland, and the premium to buy over renting shrinks to somewhere between just 2 and 20%. It's a completely different world depending on your zip code. And if we zoom out from those top 50 coastal giants, the National Association of Realtors found the script completely flips. Out of 215 mid-sized markets analyzed, buying is actually cheaper than renting in more than half of them, 119 markets to be exact. The vast majority of these buyer-friendly areas are located in the Midwest and the South, where home prices have historically stayed much lower. Which brings us to Section 4, hidden costs and equity. It is so easy to just compare your mortgage principal and interest against your rent and call it a day. But these hidden costs of homeownership, they are the ultimate scale tippers. We're talking property taxes, homeowners insurance, strict HOA fees, inevitable maintenance and repairs, because we all know water heaters only ever decide to explode on a holiday weekend, right? Plus steep closing costs. All of this can rapidly turn what looked like a super manageable monthly mortgage into a severe financial burden. Renters generally dodge all of that. Stacking the major pros and cons side by side, the strategic differences are pretty stark. Renting gives you incredible agility, capital preservation since you aren't tying up a massive down payment, and totally shields you from unexpected repair bills. Buying, on the other hand, forces a long-term strategy for wealth accumulation through building equity. It locks you into a fixed monthly housing payment that protects you from rising rent and, of course, offers total customization of your living space.
To really make sense of this mathematically, Zillow uses this awesome concept called the break-even horizon. Because buying involves massive upfront closing costs, you literally start in the red. If you don't plan to stay in a home long enough to surpass those upfront purchasing costs and let the home's value appreciate, buying will mathematically never be cheaper than renting. You basically have to stay put for the math to ever work in your favor.
And then there's the big one, an often ignored factor, the opportunity cost. Renters aren't necessarily just throwing money away if they're disciplined. A renter can theoretically build serious, long-term wealth by taking the tens of thousands of dollars they would have spent on a down payment and closing costs and investing it straight into the stock market. At a modest 6% annual return, that liquid investment can sometimes totally outpace the equity gained in a home, especially during those first few years of a mortgage where you're mostly just paying interest, not principal.
Finally, let's wrap things up with Section 5, making your choice.
This quote from Bankrate analyst Alex Gailey absolutely nails it. It summarizes our entire explainer today. Yes, the data strongly favors renting right now from a pure monthly cash flow perspective in most major markets. But if you crave flexibility, love to travel, and want total freedom from replacing broken appliances, renting is absolutely your smartest move. However, if you have a stable job, want to plant permanent roots in your community, and need the structure of forced savings, buying remains the ultimate goal.
The math has officially changed, and you know what? It's totally okay if your strategy changes right along with it. There is no longer a one-size-fits-all answer to the American housing dilemma. As you weigh the reality of today's market, looking at the high costs, your local geography, and all those hidden fees, ask yourself this: which path truly aligns with your ultimate financial and lifestyle goals right now? Will you invest in the flexibility of renting or build your long-term wealth in home equity? Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Keep analyzing, keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.